I want to say something about illegal protest. Yeah, because of COVID, the government made protesting illegal. Well, this is the position of Black Lives Matter. We're protesting against police brutality. That should be illegal. We're protesting against deaths in custody. That should be illegal. We're protesting against child abuse. Police abusing our children on the street. That should be illegal. So fuck their laws. When it's time to protest, we're out on the street and let's get solidarity.
Hello, I'm Ed Poole, and today I'm joined by Delia Mattis, who is a political and environmental activist involved in Black Lives Matter, Kill the Bill, and the campaign to stop the Edmonton Incinerator. Hi Delia, thanks for joining us.
Hello, good afternoon. Happy to be here.
Great to have you. Obviously, we know each other from being active in the Labour Party in the past, under the previous leadership, Jeremy Corbyn. How do you feel about Keir Starmer's leadership of the Labour Party?
Well, I feel so badly about it that I left. I couldn't no longer stomach paying my membership fee to a leadership like that. I think he's absolutely appalling. I think he stands for nothing. I think it's impossible for the Labour Party to win an election. I mean, they know that. We all know that nobody's going to vote for fake Tory when they can vote for the real thing. After this amount of time and at this point, if you ask yourself the question, what does Keir Starmer stand for? What would be the answer to that? No one knows. He's done some appalling things. He said, you know, very disparaging things about Black Lives Matter. And it was at that point where I could no longer stomach, because it was deliberate. And people talk about him saying, you know, it's a moment. One time, he didn't say it one time. He did 2 interviews back to back and said it again. So it was deliberate. I know he apologized after, but the damage was already done. And so I can't stay in a party. You know, I'm not a cult member. I don't need to be a part of the Labour Party. And I'm not going to be a part of something that's led by someone like that represents nothing. Not my Black community or not my working class community. So on those grounds, I had to cancel my membership.
Yeah, I did too, on pretty much a similar sort of time. We saw there was a leaked report about some of the things that went on from Labour staffers and high up people in the Labour Party during the time Corbyn was leader, kind of working almost against their own party. And one of the things we saw a lot of was what seemed to be a lot of extremely unpleasant harassment targeted particularly at and abusive language targeted at Black MPs. And we were supposed to have the Ford report looking into the kind of self-sabotage of Labour Party members and the kind of racism that seemed to be apparent in those WhatsApp groups and emails and so on, whatever it was. But the Ford report appears to, after we've seen reports in the past kind of appear after weeks, has been, I don't know, it's been a year now, I think, it's almost a year. How do you think that reflects on the Labour Party?
I have to be honest about this, because I made submissions to the Ford report. So I've submitted 3 complaints about anti-Black racism, blatant as well, anti-Black racism in the Labour Party. But the actual incidents happened before Keir Starmer's leadership. So whilst we need to see what the Ford report says, we do need to see it, because lots of if it's on race grounds that people are interested, lots of Black people vote for the Labour Party or have done in the past. So we need to see what that report says. But if we're being honest, it wasn't perfect, you know, before Keir Starmer's leadership. I didn't get a response to any of my complaints when I complained about racism, and the left were in charge there. So I just feel like it's important to be honest about that.
Absolutely. So, I mean, one of the things sort of assume you're alluding to there is in Enfield, across the kind of Enfield CLPs, we had somebody, for example, there's obviously unfortunately a lot of examples, but one kind of very overt example was somebody setting up spoof Twitter accounts for various people on the left in Enfield in the Labour Party that included all sorts of horrendous kind of racist, anti-black tropes and all sorts. And this went on for months and months, and it was pretty clear who was involved. And as far as I know, no one was ever even spoken to. No one was suspended. Nobody. I mean, if you get accused of something in the Labour Party, normally you're suspended and there's an investigation. But you were targeted in some of that, weren't you? Did you hear from the Labour Party about any of it?
I mean, I heard from the Labour Party, but it was not taken as seriously as some other things that people accused of and their systematic suspensions. And so you get the evidence suggests that anti-black racism is in a lower tier than other things, because nobody was suspended. There wasn't like an in-depth investigation. And we were, I mean, it was horrendous what we were suffering on social media. Absolutely horrendous. The worst type of racism, blatant racism. And nothing happened. And you kind of become, so the whole Black Lives Matter uprising happened last year. And now, like, we know that this kind of behavior is completely unacceptable. But to us who were experiencing it at that time, we always felt that it was unacceptable, but nobody really was supporting us. And I felt that those in the leadership back then who claimed to be anti-racist were ignoring anti-black racism. And I think that was quite hurtful, because we all were working so hard for the party. And for us to be ignored in that way was quite shocking. But that wasn't even the only complaint. I mean, I had a member in a meeting, I moved a motion actually on institutional racism and gave statistics of, you know, what exactly I'm talking about: police brutality, murder, education, jobs. And somebody stood up and actually said, I don't know why you're talking about this now. We should be focused on anti-Semitism because that's in the news, and I don't even want to get into that debate. But then he goes to me, and I'm not saying if I turn out the lights, I can't see you because you're too black. This is in a meeting full of people, and no one responded. I had to fight for myself, which I'm more than capable of doing. But this was in a party that claims to be like anti-racist. So it was just unbelievable. Nothing happened to him either.
Horrific. I mean, I've unfortunately heard and even witnessed, not as bad as that, but obviously witnessed a few. Just think of the way people get spoken to, the way people are spoken over, interruptions, kind of stereotypes resorted to. And also it's, I mean, in the Labour Party, I only joined the Labour Party relatively recently, and you kind of expected, even from people on the right wing of the Labour Party, you expected better, but it was much worse than I thought. And I obviously don't experience it, just kind of witnessing it secondhand. Yeah, horrific. One of the other things that we had, I noticed while I was in the Labour Party in Enfield, was when we had, I mean, there was a big saga around selection of local council candidates. But one of the things that I think was pretty shocking and was never picked up by the news media or anybody really outside of Enfield was that all Black and Muslim councillors were deselected during the council selection process. So although a couple were kind of reselected usually in worse seats, so where I ran in town wards as Tory safe seats.
With the help of the left, they were reselected, yeah. With the help of all of us, yeah.
But that was I think you were part way through that process with the left kind of got hold of the local campaign forum, and I think you were on that, weren't you? What was the attitude of kind of London Labour region and the Labour Party to the selection process, and how horrific it was?
Well, you remember how many complaints there were. I mean, there were evidence of complete, and I don't use these words, lightly, corruption. I mean, people didn't pass their interviews and still somehow ended up on the council panel. You saw some of the evidence because it was widely publicised. If you didn't see it, Squawk Box was receiving quite a lot of information about some of the application forms that were received. We had it confirmed that certain people didn't get through their interview and still they ended up on the panel. And good candidates weren't given the opportunity because it was kind of stitched up at it was absolutely stitched up at the top. It was a disgrace. And even with all of the black councillors, you would think that a party that claims to be about equality will stamp down on that. Nothing happens. There were complaints, there was a huge investigation, but what happened is they made the investigation so big and ridiculous that nothing possibly could come out of it. In the end, they interviewed anybody that wanted to be interviewed for part of this investigation, and the conclusions that came out were rulings on future panels, and there should be a focus on black candidates in the next election, but all that's gone now. I mean, it's just dead in the water. Nobody was suspended, nobody was disciplined, nothing happened. So, after giving so much of your energy to a party that does nothing, and this was not the right wing actually in charge of the party, this was when the left took over. So we were pretty much in a hopeless situation because we were fighting so hard, but we fought for nothing. And so all of that racism, it just went unpunished. Just went.
Yep. Brushed under the carpet.
Yeah, and who the people affected. But I mean, if you go to Edmonton, the people, like ordinary community people, they don't understand it. They don't understand how is it that the Labour Party is not representing us? Where are our representatives? They don't understand to explain, the internal processes and what goes on in the party. It's just so much, it's too much energy sometimes. They just don't get it. The party is kind of, they're not in touch with local communities, and that is the Labour Party in particular at the moment. I mean, the protests that we're having over here, there was one against the LTNs the other week. This party's lost its way.
Absolutely. So since leaving the Labour Party, you've obviously been involved in a lot of kind of more specific campaigning. Can you tell us what's happening with the Police Crime and Sentencing and Courts Bill? Is that the right name?
Yeah. What's happening with it? Well, what's happening is the government is pushing through legislation that is actually, it's beyond oppressive. It's moving towards fascism. It's attacking things like rights to protest, and it's giving police more powers that they don't even want, to be quite truthful. They don't want it. They didn't ask for any of this, and it's unnecessary. But taking away our rights to protest, talking about measuring the volume of protest and then being able to say, no, it's too loud, you've got to stop. So if the people are rising up against an oppression that it's facing in society, and then the state brings about laws that takes away those people's rights to fight against that oppression, that's fascism. That's fascism. And that's where we're heading with the police bill.
Now, the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Bill is one of the most pernicious bills of our time. It's racist, it's sexist, and it's wicked and evil. Let me tell you something. Sarah Everard, may she rest in peace, was murdered and raped by a police officer. Do the police need more powers, people? No. Do they need more powers than what they have, people? No. Can you imagine what more Wayne Couzens on our streets would do to the the ordinary citizens. Listen, 750 police officers have been charged with sexual misconduct. 750 police officers, and only 83 of those officers has been sacked. Do the police need more powers, people? Can you imagine what kind of department has 750 of its workers that have been charged with sexual misconduct and hasn't been shut down? Do the police please more powers, people? No, they do not.
We've got, everybody has the right to protest. I mean, like, how many hundreds of years have we used protest to amplify our voices around any issues, campaign against injustices that we face, police brutality, murder, trade unions protesting for workers' rights? How many years have we had those rights? It's a human right. And regardless of what the law says, it is still going to be a human right. Everybody has the right to voice their opinion when they're feeling subjugation or oppression.
I'm wondering what the hell will happen to us. You know, currently, black people are 10 times more likely to be stopped and searched than anybody else. 10 times more likely. Do you know what that means to a black person in the streets? Our youth. Our youth are criminalized by the police. They're stopped and searched and harassed daily. Do the police need more powers, people? No, we've got to continue to fight against this pernicious bill. Listen, they're trying to take away our rights to protest. Are we going to allow them to take our rights to protest? For hundreds of years, black people and brown people have used protest as a way to make our voices heard for hundreds of years. Are we going to let them take away our human rights, people? For hundreds of years, organized workers have used protest as a way to make their demands loud and clear. Are we going to allow them to take away our rights, people? For hundreds of years, the Gypsy, Roma and traveller community have held their traditions. The government is trying to criminalize their very way of life, their existence. Are we going to let them take away our rights, people? Let me tell you what they didn't count for. They didn't count for all of us being here in unity and solidarity. They didn't know that black people would join forces with the Gypsy, Roma and traveller community and stand in solidarity against this wicked, evil government.
Everybody has the right to speak out against oppression. And where we're at the moment is the government's trying to force it through. But we have to make it so that it's completely ungovernable. We have to make it so that regardless of what they say, this will not be allowed to happen. We're going to go and protest anyway. We have to make it clear right from the jump that whatever happens in Parliament, that's got nothing to do with the people, because the people will always protest, and we'll make those protests bigger and louder.
They didn't know. And let me tell you something. We can never, ever stop. Protesting is a human right. Do you agree? Yeah. Protesting is a human right, and we cannot allow this racist, fascist government to take away our human rights to protest. Never, ever. And let me tell you how we're going to do this. We're going to do it in unity. And we're going to do it in humanity. We can defeat this bill in humanity. And we're going to do it in solidarity. And when we stand together in solidarity and continue to march against this racist government, we will always win and we will always come out on top.
I talk about this government and I say, this government has no right to talk about human rights abuses anywhere when they are bringing in the most oppressive law. I mean, this is like North Korea style laws we're bringing in over here. And really, these laws should be condemned by other countries. The UN should condemn the laws that they're trying to bring in here. So that's where we're at. We're in a state of, we now have to protest. We have to protest for everything, every oppression, every injustice. We have to be on those streets protesting, because we've got to make it clear to this government, the most far right-wing government we've had in modern years. We have to make it clear to them that they're not going to take away our human rights. So that's where we're at. And it's not just the police bill, it's the borders bill, the most racist bill. It's adding amendments that will allow them to take away British citizenship from individuals and deport them anyway. The worst type of repressive laws that we've ever had. Thatcher, gone way further than Thatcher even. So it's against all the government's bills, not just the police bill, that we have to be on those streets protesting. And it's going to take all hands on deck. Unfortunately, so we first did I think there's two groups. So Kill the Bill Official was like BLM groups and some XR groups and other groups that came and joined a coalition to organise protests. And we literally just went. We literally just said, this is happening, let's get the noise out there, let's mobilise, let's get speakers. And we just went. We didn't have like loads of money. We didn't have like the big fancy stages. We were just like grassroots organising at its finest, thousands of people out on the streets. And we didn't have any backing from any trade union. Actually, in all of the protests that we've done this year, we've never had any backing from any trade union. UCU came and joined the protest, and the General Secretary spoke. She's great. She spoke at one of our protests and she's really good. But we never had any trade union backing. It was literally grassroots doing what grassroots does the best, mobilising, organising, getting the voice out there. And this is like the Black Lives Matter style protest. Do you know what I mean? Like organic. There's an issue, let's get out there. Let's see who we can join forces with and let's just go. Don't let anyone stop us, we're marching on the street. And that's what we've done. So with the way that we've done it is like this. We're not waiting for bureaucracy to have loads of meetings to make a decision on whether they're going to support us or whether we can protest or not. We're not doing that. That ended with the BLM uprising. Now when there's an issue, we just mobilise and we go. We'd like to have the trade unions on board. And I have been working with People's Assembly. I don't know if you're going to speak about that, but I have been doing a lot with People's Assembly, and we are trying to organise some meetings between Black Lives Matter and the trade unions. But yeah, that's where we're going with it. I could say so much more.
Sounds brilliant. You've answered most of my questions before I've asked them, but we'll work with that. In terms, you mentioned the borders bill and the right to strip people of their citizenship and deport people. Do you think that's going to affect people's willingness and their ability to protest if they feel like they're going to be targeted?
I think some people will be afraid, but I hope, from what I've seen, a lot of people will be more angry than afraid. I am incensed. Like, I am completely incensed that the government is bringing about such racist bills and also trying to take away our right to protest. I'm incensed. So I'm now at the point where I'll protest for anything. And people just need to see, people who aren't used to doing that kind of thing just need to see it. They need to see what solidarity actually looks like, because it's the most empowering thing. And I think once people experience it, they sort of get that bug that they want to do it more and more. I think there's only going to be a matter of time before more people start rising up and fighting for their rights, because it's either you fight for your rights or you lay down and let this racist government trample all over you. And I know which choice I would take.
Definitely. Do you think the very racist nature and the fact that they're kind of empowering the police and the immigration services and so on to be so much more racist in a way puts puts people who aren't going to be subject to that racism in a position where they need to take more of the risks, I guess. So somebody like myself who's not going to get deported if I get arrested perhaps needs to get out there a bit more and take on some more of those risks, because the stakes are not quite perhaps so high for me. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, so we talk about, one of the things that I have met in the last couple of years is amazing allies who, we talk about white privilege a lot, and it's about it. I just wish people would get more comfortable with the fact that they do have privilege. What can you do with it in, you know, in campaigning? What can you do with it on the streets? Well, you can use your privilege to shield others. I swear, when we did those big Kill the Bill marches through London, I would have like 3 or 4 white bodies. So if anything happened, the police would stop them before they stopped me. That's how serious they took their allyship. And we need that, you know, we need that protection. Black women are always at the forefront of campaigning, but we can't do that without like allies with us, at the side of us, behind us, and in front of us as well. And so definitely we need more of that. You know, you're not in any threat. You know, you're not going to be deported. You're probably not even going to be arrested. And if you are arrested, you'll be released without charge. A lot different for Black people. And so we rely on our comrades and allies to come out and join forces with us, because without that, there's no movement. Yeah.
Okay, great. So obviously you've been very active in Black Lives Matter in the UK. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, it's such a, so the uprising, I mean, you can stay home and be awash with all the emotions, because it was such an emotional time last year. And you can just be awash with it, or you can think, okay, what do we do with this now? Now that it's here, what do we do with it? And for us, I mean, we have a coalition now from BLM groups from across the country. And we're only it took time for us to get to the place where we're at now, and we're just starting to formalise as a BLM coalition. And it's powerful. I feel powerful in it. We're able to organise. When we go to events and we talk about the issues that Black people are experiencing in society, people do listen. And we're not here to make anybody feel uncomfortable. So we're just telling the raw truth about the issue. And I think things are starting to change. I know a lot of people are a bit negative about it, but I mean, Ed, you only have to turn on your television. I don't know if you watch television, but this year, all right, so if you watch television tonight, look at the Christmas adverts that you see. Count how many Christmas adverts you see that don't have Black people in it. Because I don't think you'll see any. And for us, I mean, for a Black person, it is important. Some people think it's a small thing. It's not a small thing. It's actually a big thing. Because when you have Black children growing up in a white society and they don't see their image in the media, on the television, it's a very damaging thing, because they don't know what they're supposed to look like, and they don't know what's happening to them. Why don't they fit into the image that they're seeing? They don't look like that. Their world doesn't look like that. So is that supposed to be the norm? And if that's the norm, what are they? Now you will have Black children growing up looking at the television and feeling a part of society. So regardless of what people say, people minimize this thing, but it's not to be minimized. It's a huge thing for the youth growing up, for small children looking at that. They think, oh, okay, we're allowed to celebrate Christmas as well. It's a big thing. That wasn't happening before the Black Lives Matter uprising. So things are starting to change. These laws, the bill that we've just been talking about, the police bill is a government response to Black Lives Matter and a government response to Extinction Rebellion. Those movements are so powerful that the government has to bring out a law to try and stop it. But unfortunately, bringing out a law to try and stop us is only going to make us more determined.
Great. One of the things that's been kind of debated a lot. I'm probably going to be watching the football this evening. Premier League footballers are still taking the knee before games, I think. That's been described as Marxist somehow. I'm not sure what the connection is, but there seems to have been a kind of an argument about whether that's Black Lives Matter, whether it's an anti-racism thing, that they should clap or they should do something else. Because how do you feel about the debate that's kind of gone on between, I don't know, football pundits and newsreaders and TV presenters about what it all means?
It's so weird. The Colin Kaepernick in American black footballer, took the knee and they sacked him. Do you know what I mean? They didn't like that peaceful. When people was rioting on the streets, they complained about that. People protesting and rioting on the street, they don't like that. So now you have some British footballers and other countries as well, taking the knee. What are you complaining about? It's an act of solidarity. Start rioting on the streets and protesting, taking over our streets. People complain about that. Here you've got some footballers who are deciding to do what they can against this injustice that actually exists, racism, and they're peacefully taking the knee on a football pitch. They have a huge platform and it sends a really big message. What's wrong with it? And also, like, I don't think people should dictate how people campaign against racism. So they've decided to take the knee. Let them do it. They've got a huge platform. Let them do it. I don't like the performative stuff where people, on their doorstep and take the knee and take a picture and put it on social media. That's irritating to me because it doesn't mean anything. Going and taking the knee in a park, that doesn't mean anything. But footballers have a huge platform, and whenever, I'm not a football fan, but when I do see it, it does make me feel good. I do feel, yeah, well done, and keep doing that. So listen, whenever you're campaigning against any injustice, people are always going to complain about what you're doing. And actually, if nobody was complaining about what they're doing, that means it's not having an impact. So they should just keep doing it. I like that they take the knee.
You're also an environmental activist, and you've been outspoken locally. You're involved in local issues in opposition to the Enfield Incinerator. Can you tell us what's been going on about that? I was kind of vaguely aware of that when I was still living in Enfield. It seemed like an unwise plan. Can you tell us what's happening?
Yes, so the Edmonton Incinerator has existed for 50 years, and it came to the end of its lifespan, and instead of getting rid of it, they decided to extend it, make it bigger, 30% bigger. It already burns the black and orange bin waste of 7 whole boroughs in Edmonton. Now, if you look at Edmonton, already overpopulated, because that's what happens in deprived areas. It's one of the most deprived constituencies in the country. Overpopulated, over-polluted from the North Circular. Sometimes it's just so smoggy up there that it's really difficult to breathe. And in an area like that, that's where they decide to build an incinerator. That burns the rubbish of 7 boroughs. It doesn't even make any sense. If we talk about the issue that we have with the incinerator, which is air pollution, in Edmonton, the people are over 40% the national average of contracting and dying from COVID. Those are the statistics for Edmonton. And as we know, Black people are 50% more likely to contract it and die from it than white people. Edmonton is made up of over 30% Black, over 60% Black, brown, or another racial or ethnic group. And you can see it. You can see what Edmonton's racial makeup is. So you just go and stand on Poole Street, you can see it. And that's the area where they'll build an incinerator. And it's not by accident, it's by design. Incinerators are 3 times more likely to be built in areas of great deprivation. Greenpeace has done a lot of work around that. So you've got an incinerator in an area that's largely Black and poor and deprived, the environment, climate change, climate justice, all of those things. We're more aware in the last 5 years. That's just a given. I wasn't campaigning for climate justice 5 years ago. So the consultation was supposed to be open to 2 million residents of North London. And in the first stage, 72 people responded. And in the second stage, 123 people responded out of 2 million residents. Now, if that's me, I'm saying, oh my God, we've got something very wrong here. We need to do something to consult the residents better. But no, they boast about having an in-depth consultation, and it's a complete sham. We decided to campaign and start a petition. We have 3,000 signatures, over 3,000 signatures on our petition, and they've only got, at best, 123. So there was no real intention of consulting with Edmonton's residents, because they don't care. That's how they treat the people of Edmonton. That's how they treat poor working class people, and it's unacceptable. The people of Edmonton don't want the incinerator. No one wants the incinerator. The Labour Party doesn't want the incinerator. MPs don't want the incinerator. Trade unions don't want the incinerator. Campaigning organisations, one after the other, don't want the incinerator. And 70 medical doctors wrote to the government to say that this incinerator expansion is going to kill people. Now, and it's not far-fetched, and they're doctors, they would know. But if we look at the death of Ella Kissi-Debrah in South London, who lived near the South Circular Road, we had an absolutely groundbreaking coroner's report that said that her death was partly due to air pollution. And still, this North London Waste Authority pressed ahead with its plans. And now we found out, a couple of days ago, I found out, Clyde Lopes, who's the chair of the NLWA, I mean, I called for his resignation on behalf of Black Lives Matter a few months back at a deputation. And now I found out that he is going to be a director of the company that's going to run the incinerator. And he's a councillor. And this is corruption. And people need to know, like the locals need to know. So this is going to be a part of our next campaign. So many people have come out against it. At this point, it's one of the most unpopular initiatives that you can have. Everybody's basically against it, except for the NLWA. We've got Pere Ahmed, the Harrogate Council leader, has just come out against it. Diane Abbott has come out against it. Jeremy Corbyn, he's been doing amazing work for us. And more people are coming out against it. And unfortunately, you've got Tory MPs, because he's the Chingford MP is Ian Duncan Smith, and he's absolutely against it. And I hate Tories, but you know what? Whoever's going to help our community to have the right to breathe clean air can join the campaign, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, so that's where we're at. So there's lots of action going on. We've got a rally, online rally on Tuesday. We've got action in Islington on Thursday. And next week, there's supposed to be a meeting in Camden to decide the bid for the incinerator. And there's going to be a big protest in Camden outside disrupting that meeting. We're going to disrupt the hell out of it. So yeah, lots going on against the incinerator.
Brilliant stuff. If people want to get involved, not just this week, but kind of longer term, where can they find out about what's happening with the incinerator?
If you go on Black Lives Matter Enfield socials, any of the socials, you will be able to find stuff on there about the campaign, about signing the petition, and about joining all of the actions that we're taking.
That's all my questions. I guess one kind of last thing. Obviously, it's inspiring and a bit of a kind of a light at the end of the tunnel almost, to hear all the stuff you're getting involved in. But if people want to get involved and they want to campaign, what's your kind of advice? What would you say to people who are sitting at home terrified and angry and don't know what to do next? What would you say?
Join one of the local campaigns that you're interested in. I can guarantee you there'll be lovely people and they'll show you the roads. And it's one of the most freeing things that you can do. Like, if you really are passionate about the issues and social justice, get out there and make a difference. It's so empowering. And once you start, you can't stop.
All right. Well, thanks very much, Delia, for talking to us.
Thank you for having me.
No
Thank
problem.
you. See you soon. Bye.
See ya. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
The protest movement has taken on this kind of organic way of protesting. There's an issue and there's a reason to go out and protest, and so we organise and we get out there. Our youth are not going to wait for trade union bureaucracy, I'm afraid. Those days are done.
Done! Over!
They're not going to wait for the old-fashioned traditions and these processes, because we know that we now have the power to mobilise and organise. The trade unions have got, I don't know why, it seems as if since last year they've been hamstrung. I mean, People's Assembly has been fantastic in getting people together, but the numbers from trade unions that we used to see on the street, as John said, have not been there. It's as if the protest movement has run away with the movement and the trade unions are falling behind, and that has got to change. Listen, if we want to challenge the government the way that we need to challenge the government, we need those numbers. And I agree, we need to organise for mass protest. We need to have the biggest protest, and there's reason for it. Listen, our civil liberties are under attack. The police crime sentencing, I mean, I don't know if you've read it. I don't know if you've read it. Taking away our rights to protest is one of the most pernicious acts that I've seen in law since my whole life. I've never seen anything. They're going to measure the decibels of our protest and tell us if it's too loud. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? We need the trade unions, but where are they? Our youth, black youth, that organise and mobilise, and they're not scared of protesting. They will come out on the street in the drop of a hat. But if we say we're going to join the trade union movement, they're like this, whoa. Why should we join that?
Listen, and we're going to end with this. Whose lives matter? Whose lives matter? Whose lives matter? I hope you're listening to that pretty baton. We're not going anywhere. We'll be back. Solidarity.